Take them or leave them, but by 2020, the millennials will make up a third of all adults in the United States.
You may know one, millennials lacking life skills like cooking, budgeting, or time management.
They're not interested in owning a house.
Many millennials say buying a home these days is just not an option.
She is calling millennials the burnout generation.
According to a new study, millennials say that the term snowflake is in fact harmful to their mental health.
Millennials hate this shit. They hate it.
Welcome to another episode of Millennial Malarkey. My name's Adam.
I'm Alec.
I'm Jesse.
I'm Jesse, too.
Oh, wait, I'm Andrew. That's right.
What?
Really, Andrew?
I'm in a mood today, guys.
Okay. I get to introduce myself once a week,
Jesse, didn't it?
and that's it. And you've ruined things.
Okay, so Andrew, we are going to refer to you as Jesse for the rest of this episode. However, Jesse was Jesse first, so you're going to be Jesse 2.
But I introduced myself as Jesse, too.
Yeah,
really
actually, Jesse. Yeah, that's true. So
wait, so Andrew is Jesse 1?
Yeah.
No, I'm Jesse 1.
I can't do this. I can't do this, guys.
All right, fine. I'll just be Adam.
No.
I'm Adam.
You'll be Andrew and like it.
Okay, fine.
All right, let's start this again. Welcome to another episode of Millennial Malarkey. I'm Adam.
I'm Alec.
I guess I'm Andrew now.
And I'm tired, and you're watching Disney Channel.
This is
I know you can't.
guys.
I know you can't see it, but I did the little
Did you draw the
Mickey
ears?
Mouse thing.
Oh, I totally saw it in my head. Don't worry.
Have you guys seen those videos of like what they actually draw when they do that, and it's like nothing close to the ears?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my god, it's so funny.
No, that always bothered me that like it never lined up. Like you would see like the tip of the wand like 2 feet away from like the outline of the mouse ears.
Well, that's just because you don't know how magic works, Alec.
Apparently.
Come on.
Speaking of
Alec.
magic, what are we talking about today, guys?
Today we'll be doing our first versus first versus podcast. Holy crap. It's a long day. So first versus podcast, we'll be taking high fantasy versus sci-fi, and then we'll put those two together at the end to see which one wins. So Andrew, do you want to do sci-fi or high fantasy first?
Well, I feel like I should take sci-fi. I mean, in high school, like 90% of my identity was that I like Doctor Who and Star Wars. So I feel like that's the best decision for me to go with. If no one else objects to that, or excuse me, if nobody objects to that.
Nope. I second.
Cool.
I second your motion.
All right. Well, I feel like I can't think of the word now because I'm not an English major, but surely that one works. Two of the biggest franchises in all of sci-fi history are Star Wars and Star Trek. Could everyone agree to that?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
They both got star in the name.
I know, right? It's no originality there. But yeah, so I just figured if we're going to try and find two sci-fi franchises to pit against each other, I mean, it might be kind of cliche, but I feel like Star Wars and Star Trek makes the most sense. So I figured we could all just kind of run down real quick and state whether we're on Team Star Wars or Star Trek to kind of figure out where the teams line up. And then we can have a little bit of a debate, explain our justification for why we think which one is better. And then sort of try and vote on, see if anyone's minds have changed and vote on like a winner for this sort of section, if you will. So I'll go ahead and just start off and say that I am 100% Team Star Wars if we're having to choose between the two.
I would have never guessed.
I know, right? The dude with Boba Fett in his Facebook profile picture is on Team Star Wars. Who'd have thunk it? Adam, what team are you on?
I'm in the middle. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. So you got some swing voters.
I could go either way. Yes, I could. I'm a swing voter. Alec?
Well, I was going to say, I'm thinking the same thing. I'm a big fan of the movies of like Star Wars and Star Trek because J.J. Abrams is fantastic. I know that Andrew's not a fan of the new Star Wars trilogy, but
True.
J.J. Abrams is a good director. Like, it's hard to argue with, his results. He's good at what he does.
His results of lens flares and then more lens flares.
Yeah, but they're beautiful.
It's like Michael Bay with explosions.
Yeah, no, everyone's got to have their little niche thing.
Hey, if it works, don't send a 10-year-old to pod race on Tatooine to fix it. Am I right? Hashtag
You are right.
got it. Jesse,
so I'm going to say, just for the sake of this argument, I'm going to say Star Trek. Because
Wow.
I'm full disclosure, I don't think I've ever seen an episode of the TV show, but I'm kind of basing this just off the movies.
Well, that's one way to do it.
That's a big.
I think there's a lot of. I think they're called Trekkers now, not Trekkies. I think there's a lot of Trekkers out there that you're triggering right now, Alec. I'm not gonna lie.
That's okay.
That's okay. They don't matter. Jesse,
they're not listening.
No, no, they're busy being beamed up or whatever. Jesse,
yes, our dozen listeners.
You'll get there eventually, Andrew. Keep trying.
Thank you,
Jesse.
Thank you.
Where are you at?
I want Andrew to ask me because he's been trying.
Thank you, Jesse. Okay. Jesse, where are you at?
Thank you, Jesse, too.
Yeah, Jesse. Wait, no, I thought it was Jesse 1, but that's okay. I'll take it because you're nice to me.
You're Jesse, too. Anyhow, no, I figured most of the people in this would be Star Wars, and so I was very happy to choose Star Trek because, let's be honest, there's some pretty cool lightsaber sounds in the show. I know you don't like the new trilogy, but the lightsaber sounds that they use in the new trilogy are insane, and I guess some of the action's all right too. But compared to like Star Trek, like there's the scene. Okay, I like the Next Generation TV series. I did not like Star Trek original, but Captain Picard, aka Jean-Luc Picard, was just absolutely killer. Loved watching that show when I was younger with my dad, and technically the rest of my family. But anyhow, the remakes with the movies where they start doing all these like lens flare thing is okay. I really didn't like it, but there's that one scene where like they're trying to blow up the Romulan ship or whatever in the first one that came out in 2007, and then Spock has to he starts flying basically the bomb of his ship like right towards the ship that is like coming to get him. Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, "Oh, I know what you're doing. You're about to blow me up." And he's like, "Fire everything." And then you hear all the missiles just go pew, pew, pew. But we're in space, so really they should sound like this.
Oh, okay.
But they don't.
So we're starting to.
But so anyhow,
let's say we're starting to kind of get into the justifications of it, where I was sort of thinking we'd just get a head count at first before we start like an actual sort of discussion on it.
Okay, well, sorry, that scene was so cool.
Yeah,
and like the way they have taken it from like the really cool, nerdy like TV series into what they did with the movies is why I pick that over Star Wars, because I think it has been grown and like matured very well.
Oh, so you're
instead of have you
seen the TV show though?
Yeah, he said he watched it as a kid.
Are you talking
I was
about
zoning out.
Star Trek or Star Wars? Because Star Wars, no, I have not seen TV shows. I didn't have cable.
We're not going to count the TV shows for Star Wars.
Okay, fair enough. But yes, I have seen many episodes of Star Trek original. I ignored Deep Space Nine, rightfully so, and then I liked and loved all the movies for Next Generation.
Okay, so you're not like
shout out to Lieutenant Data,
even though you really like the movies and what they've done to sort of reinvent or whatever, re-energize the franchise.
I like the whole thing.
Oh my gosh, yeah! Have you heard the soundtrack of the new Star Trek? I think it's awesome. It's what is it, Michael Giacchino or something like that?
It's Giacchino or Giacchino. I'm not sure, but he's fantastic.
I know. That soundtrack, I think, blows anything that George Lucas did out of the water.
Oh my God! Don't even suggest that. Well, George Lucas didn't do anything for music.
Yeah, you're talking crap on John Williams now.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a man. like I'll give you the new trilogy so far. The music has not been great, but I mean, talk about okay, we're getting to the debate. So, Alec, do you still feel like taking your Star Trek stance since you were initially feeling like you were on the sort of in the middle there, or now that there's representation for sure for both, do you want to commit harder to the middle? No worries either way. Just
I think I'm gonna go with Star Trek still.
okay, that's fine.
You know, sorry, I'll justify it later when it's my turn.
Oh no, it's all good. I wasn't sure if you were just doing it for the sake of everyone thinking everyone was going to say Star Wars and wanting to make sure there was representation on the other side. So,
well, I mean, I really could go either way, but I know Adam could too. So, Adam and I are the wild cards. Which one do you want to take?
Do I have to choose?
No. I mean, we'll vote in the end after sort of we debate for a little bit.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. If you guys both want to be sort of like undecided voters, we could do it like that, and then it'll be Jesse and me debating. But if you do feel like you lean more Star Trek, then by all means, take that side right now. But
I'll probably argue points for both.
Okay.
Same.
And against both.
Sweet.
Same.
So okay, cool. Well, I feel like since this is labeled is it Star Wars versus Star Trek or Star Trek versus Star Wars? How did we say it?
Either.
Star Series versus Star Series.
Perfect. That answered it. Well, I thought we were saying Star Trek versus Star Wars. No, Star Wars versus Star Trek. So I figure since
Star Fox is also an option here. So
who's on Team Star Fox?
Not me. I'm a Samus main, actually.
Oh.
I don't even know what that is.
More of a Stargate fellow myself.
Oh, here we go.
There's a lot of star shows.
I like stars.
Like Dancing with the Stars.
And I'm not sure that any of them are on stars.
Like the space entities.
No,
the
platform.
The setting. The setting is on the star. Yes.
I meant like
Can't have a
Stars,
setting
Showtime
on a
kind
star.
of thing.
Speaking of stars,
star.
you know what has 2 stars? Tatooine.
Yeah, it
I
does.
thought it was 2 planets. No, that's indoor.
I wish you wouldn't get copyrighted. Otherwise, like right now, we could have music from all these playing in the background. Like you could have Binary Sunset playing.
There's your music.
Actually, there's the Fair Use Act. I think legally we're allowed to use clips from that. Like we can't play the entire thing, but I think we're allowed within like 30 seconds of something when it's a review like this.
My name's George Lucas, and I heard you using some of my music on your podcast, so I'm going to sue your ass.
And it's not his music
that's
anymore.
What George
Mickey
Lucas
Mouse's,
sounds like.
So, arguably
my name's
worse.
George Lucas. That's what he sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the worst impression of him I've heard. But anyways, well, I feel like since it's Star Wars versus Star Trek probably rolls off the tongue better, I'll go ahead and start with my Star Wars justifications, and then we can talk about those. Jesse, obviously, you can provide counterpoints or whatever if you want, and then we'll kind of move more.
Don't worry.
On the Star Trek ones. So I feel like for me, there's definitely a coolness factor for liking Star Wars versus Star Trek, which makes Star Wars better. Like it's much more socially acceptable, and not that means everything, but it is much more socially acceptable to be a Star Wars fan than a Star Trek fan. Would anyone disagree with that?
I don't disagree with the statement. I disagree with the principle.
Okay. Well, how about the vice principal?
I disagree with him too, and the superintendent.
Well, you need to take that up to school corporate then. But I mean, I don't necessarily mean that it's better in that like you won't get judged as hard for it, but by being more mainstream, it kind of allows you to celebrate it more like stylishly, if that makes sense. Like you can go and get like the retro Star Wars lunch boxes or t-shirts or whatever, and like that's cool to, well, maybe not to everybody, but like that's a
everyone
reasonable
knows
thing
who
to do.
R2D2 is.
Exactly, yeah. And
there's even May the 4th. There's a
him.
holiday for it.
There is a total holiday for it. Thank you. Actually, we celebrated that once. I think was it senior year of high school at my place. Watched all 6 of them at the time. That was fun.
Tried.
Well, I got through all of them. I don't remember who all stayed because people were kind of coming in and out. But anyways,
I know, I didn't.
That's one reason I have for it. Another thing, which I haven't seen all of the Star Trek TV series, but I have seen a few of the episodes, and I did see some of the newer movies anyways. The scene that Jesse's talking or was mentioning earlier where he jumped out into space, right, and it was silent out there. Is that what you were saying?
I was talking about the end where he's like, fire everything. And then it goes, pew, 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 pew.
Pew, pew, pew.
And then it goes, sorry.
Oh, it's back.
Throwback.
It's back.
Oh my God. Well, okay.
Alec, you're out of a job.
I guess.
So Star Trek, I think, tries to pride itself on being a little bit more scientifically accurate than maybe Star Wars or some other, franchises. So like,
right. I know the part what you're talking about where he jumps out to space and it just like goes completely quiet.
Yeah. There's a scene in, that was the first one. Was that Into Darkness?
Yeah, that was the first one when he's like, he jumps down to the drill and it's just completely silent for a couple seconds while they're like going through space, and then they hit the atmosphere and it starts picking up like whoom, 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 as they pass sections of the drill.
Yeah, and so there's a scene in that Star Trek movie where he jumps out into space and all sound is out. It's totally silent. And that's pretty scientifically accurate because there's, as most people know, space is a vacuum, so there's no air there, and sound being a mechanical wave requires a medium to be able to travel through it, and since there's no air, it can't, so you can't really hear anything in space. So that's much more scientifically accurate than, like, say, Star Wars, where you see X-Wings and TIE fighters shooting things and things are exploding, but you hear it. That wouldn't really happen. And that's cool.
But it is much more cinematic.
Exactly.
It's beautifully done.
Exactly. While Star Trek might be more scientifically accurate, it kind of sacrifices, I think, like what actually makes a movie entertaining. And a large part of that is the soundscape of it, if that's the proper term. I don't know. And so I feel like Star Wars, just by like design of breaking some of the laws of physics and being more out there, caters to a more exciting experience overall, like in terms of the explosions and stuff like that. Plus, I mean, phasers are cool, but I mean, I feel like lightsabers are easily the most iconic weapon in all of sci-fi history, and that's for a reason.
I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Andrew, though.
I would love to try and answer it.
As an avid Star Wars fan, how do you feel about Jar Jar Binks?
Love him.
Wait, what?
Love him. He's Darth Plagueis. Can confirm.
Oh, God.
No.
Oh, boy.
I mean, like watching the movies now, yeah, he's one of the more annoying characters, but Phantom Menace and all those movies came out when I was little, so I didn't hate him back then, and I don't hate the episodes 1 through 3. They have a very special place in my heart, and I could very happily watch any one of those 3 just as much as I could, 4 through 6. They're all the same amount of special to me. So I don't hate Jar Jar.
You're the chosen one.
But
You're supposed to bring balance to the Force, not destroy it.
There's another sort of point to Star Wars that I do think makes it better than Star Trek. However, it's a really big one, and I think it might make more sense later on in the podcast to bring it up then, if that makes any sort of sense. So I don't know. Is there anything I said that people agree with or disagree with, that Star Wars is more mainstream, which kind of provides some more opportunities to celebrate it? It's more or less, more visually.
It's definitely
or
more popular.
Oh yeah, but I mean, in terms of pros and cons, like there's the more kind of cinematic experience, and it's a more entertaining thing to watch in general because it breaks some of the laws.
I think Star Trek is definitely more cinematic.
I think
Star Wars was more of like the story.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind too, like if you're comparing it to the original Star Wars movies from like the late 70s, early 80s, like the style of cinema was much different. If you compare stuff from the last few years, Star Wars, to the Star Trek movies, I think it's a much more fair competition.
We can do that.
Okay.
I mean, I was thinking we look at the bodies of work as a whole, which would include like the Star Trek TV series.
Oh yeah. I'm specifically talking about like the cinematography of the newer properties.
Right. Have you ever seen like the original Star Treks from like the 70s?
They are horrible. I mean, like they're good stories, but like watching them hurts me.
Yeah, it's like you have the model ship of the Enterprise going through space, which is like
it's on a string, like flying across a tapestry backdrop.
Yep. But it's like a whole 4 or 5 minute sequence with music in the background. You know, and it's supposed to be quote unquote cinematic.
Yeah.
Come on.
I want to
It
point out
is.
real quick though, the scene from Last Jedi, which I might upset Andrew. The Last Jedi, I thought was a decent movie. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great, but it was good in my eyes. And there was that one scene, the captain whose name I forget decides to
Phantasma.
jump to warp drive or whatever, like straight through an enemy ship. That scene for the sound design.
Oh, the girl from Jurassic Park.
It might be. She had like pink hair.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she was
but
the paleobotanist, wasn't she?
Sounds right. I have no idea. But that blew me away in the theater, seeing that, because you get the big swelling music and like everything is happening. It's getting louder and louder and more chaotic. And then just you get that scene, that shot from like, however many like miles back in space, and it's dead silent. And you just see like the trail of light as the ship like goes through it. And then the sound hits you. Like the theater was like dead silent, except for me going like,
oh my God.
I was blown away by that.
Yeah. So see, and exactly like you're blown away by that because they break the laws of physics and stuff like that to make that.
Okay,
happen
but Star
for you.
Trek does that too.
They do for sure.
They do. But not to that extent.
Right. I think I've made up my mind. I'm going to go with Star Wars.
But we haven't even had a chance to talk about Star Trek yet. Jesse needs to give us some points.
Adam is a classic example of an American voter. I heard this story and I like this story, but you didn't hear the other side. No, but I heard this one.
Tell us the other story, Jesse. What are some points that you think make Star Trek more, or the better of the two sides?
It's more visually appealing and more, scientifically factual, sure, but like still fantasy, because like there's a point when in the first one, I'm just going to stick to movies because apparently that's what everybody's seen, and it seems like a waste if I go to.
Well, and especially if you're talking
TV
about
show.
Visual appeal, yeah, don't go to the TV show.
Okay, so yeah. Well, there was some pretty good visual appeal in some of the movies for the TV show, but anyhow.
Well, but those are movies.
Okay, anyhow, the scene. Oh, I just had it. What the heck?
I don't know.
It's in the first one. Okay, so like you have the suction of like all the air out, and then it goes quiet, and then you have like it coming back as they're falling into the atmosphere. Fine. There's another one where like as the red matter is about to explode in the first one, like you see all these like popping, booming collisions of the red matter, and then it just like gets sucked into itself, and then it makes a big boom, and then it goes completely silent. And then a black hole just rips open in the fabric of time and space, and then just starts absolutely decimating everything. So like, it's cool, not really factual, but like it has those same elements. Now we move towards the visual side of things, which not because I remember what I was going to say now. There's those scenes, and J.J. Abrams clearly loves this because he does it, I think, in two. No, he does it in all three, where they're figuring out that they can, in the first one, they figure out, if we warp to this place, like in here in Titan, then the radio or the magnetic fields from Titan will disguise our presence or whatever. And the guy on his way to Earth won't know the difference. And so they do. And they like go from like warp into Titan, and they stop like right in Titan's atmosphere, and they just go right below the clouds, and then the scene and the music, or the scene like goes musical, and then the ship lifts up, and you can see like the cloud or the dust roll off the surface of the ship as it comes out of the dust. They do it I think in the second one with clouds, and I think the third one also with clouds. But oh my God, like the visual appeal, like lightsaber fights are cool. Watching spaceships are cool. Rogue One, watching the Hammerhead cruiser pound a freaking what's the triangle ship?
Star Destroyer.
The triangle ship.
Star Destroyer, yes. Pound a Star Destroyer into the shield or whatever. That was great.
You can't mention Rogue One in visuals without talking about the several Death Star shots of destroying planets.
Okay,
that is
like
cool.
It's nice.
Jesse, I have a question for you.
What?
Pacific Rim.
Oh my God.
Was
one of my favorite movies ever. Yes.
Visually spectacular film, right?
You know what? You need to tell that to the people I work with because they knock on me all the time when I tell them, like, look at the robot, like it shudders under its own weight. They took so much time to consider everything about this movie. And they're like, oh, look, the robot, it shudders under its own weight. Yeah, it's very visually appealing.
I would think that engineers would appreciate that.
I thought so too. Like when a robot jumps down like 600 feet underwater and like it takes to a knee and like you can see the hydraulics in the knee like readjust and reposition themselves to pick itself up after like a pressure change. Like it's super visually appealing because of all the little finesses in it. Continue with your question. I'm so sorry.
All right. Okay. Pacific Rim, visually spectacular film. However, is like crap in a handbag, basically.
There's no story. Else. There's no story, but who needs it? It's a movie about robots fighting monsters.
Dude, same argument for the new Godzilla movie. Like, critics didn't like it, but I loved it. It was just big old CGI monster fights. Like, that's what I'm here to see, you know?
Star Trek pulled off a story with visual appeal.
And Star Wars didn't?
I mean, it did, but not as much visual appeal. They don't spend a lot of time focused. They spend a lot of time focused on the people. Not on the ships.
I do think that makes for a better story, though.
Sure, but I want to watch something get blown up.
I think we should kind of try to wrap this one up and just say, I think it ultimately comes down to which one do you enjoy more?
Thank you. Wait. You mean like between Star Wars and Star Trek?
I'm gonna go with Star Wars on this one, even though I haven't really seen anything of the new movies, only up to Rogue One.
Good, spare yourself.
Yeah.
I'm saying Star Wars too.
So that's 3 for Star Wars.
Star Trek.
Take your...
Sorry, Hassy.
Hey, Jesse, guess what? Feelings don't care about your facts.
That's fine.
Hashtag Ben Shapiro or whatever.
That's fine.
All right. Star Wars moving on. Next subject, we debate 2 fantasy movies. Two fantasy franchises. Adam, you should probably take the lead on this one, I think.
Right. We're doing Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just making sure. I forgot. Regardless, let's do it. Let's do a quick tab. I personally, Game of Thrones. Who's here on this side with me?
From what I've seen, I enjoyed it, but I have only seen the first. What?
You haven't seen Lord of the Rings either, have you, Alec?
I've seen the first half of the first movie.
You can save yourself.
Wrong song.
I watched like for 3 hours, and then they were like, okay, like we have established the Fellowship or something. And then I was like, cool, that was a good first movie. And then it was like, wait, what? That's half of it? What? I was like, that was 3 hours. How? Okay.
Yep.
But no, I mean, like, I don't dislike it. I just have not dedicated the time to watching through it, which is weird for me because I binge an ungodly amount of TV and movie content.
So were you saying you're taking Game of Thrones?
I think I'm going to have to, just because from what I've seen from each of them, Game of Thrones is more entertaining. I know that a lot of people did not enjoy how the series ended. I haven't seen that. I watched like the first 4, maybe 5 seasons and really enjoyed it. But then we didn't have HBO, so I haven't seen anything after that.
That would do it.
So I take it, Andrew and Jesse, you're on Lord of the Rings?
Yep.
Wow.
I also have never seen Game of Thrones all the way through because I hear things about it as people talk about it when episodes came out, and it's like, this is not appealing.
You've experienced the story secondhand.
Yeah, everybody I like dies, so no thanks.
Well, like, I either want to watch like TV or watch computer TV, if you're catching my drift. And so it's kind of awkward having actual TV have computer TV in it. And it's just like, I don't know what to do. Like, do I watch? Do I do something else? You know what I mean?
Oh, I know what he's talking about.
Well, Jesse,
thank you.
On your point about everybody dying, I think that's some of the beauty about Game of Thrones. And what George R.R. Martin established very well in the very first season of Game of Thrones is that he wants you to be like genuinely afraid for the heroes you're rooting for in his series, you know? Because how many movies and TV shows have you watched? And you know the hero is surrounded by like, you know, a whole army, and somehow they pull it out in the end by some miracle, right?
Okay, first of all, I feel like you're attacking Endgame right now.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's cool and all, but like I want to be I want to have like genuine emotions of like, oh crap, I don't know if they're gonna make it out of this fight alive or dead.
I've got
Kind of like you want to get the Infinity War style. Spoilers, by the way. They all die.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys all a quick question, which might seem like it's a step backwards, but there's a point to it.
What's that?
That's relevant to this particular case. How did you guys feel about the Phantom Menace in Star Wars, like as it compares to the original 6 movies, not the new ones?
I like the pod race.
Oh, that was the pod race one?
Yeah, the episode 1.
And the one with Tusken Raiders.
But why did you think it was boring?
It was
'Cause I don't remember
overflowing
any of
with
it.
politics.
Thank you. Overflowing with politics. Game of Thrones is to the genre of fantasy what Phantom Menace is to Star Wars. It's a little bit of fantasy. Yeah, there's dragons and giants and stuff, and all politics. All it is kings and arguing and bickering and wars and who has power. Lord of the Rings, on the other hand, is a mystical quest where several different races have to go to destroy an artifact that has an evil spirit attached to it. They're fighting orcs, they're fighting goblins. There's a literal giant fire demon, all in the first movie, so they can go throw this ring into the fires of the volcano it was forged, because that's the only place it can be destroyed. You take that, you take the massive battles from that, walking trees, etc., etc., etc. Count Dooku is in there.
Scene.
And then you just boil that fantasy genre down to here's a bunch of men who are going to complain about who's taking control of the whole Westeros area or whatever, and we'll throw a dragon in there every now and then. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just feel like Game of Thrones is to fantasy what Phantom Menace is to Star Wars.
I wholeheartedly disagree with that. A person's skull explodes.
I'm not saying it's
in Game of Thrones.
Your argument is just fundamentally flawed, Andrew. The skull
Yes.
explodes.
Pretty much.
Well, I mean, think about it.
But did you see the trees walk and fight? That was pretty dope.
That's what I'm saying. And I'm not saying there's no redeeming values to that. The Phantom Menace, despite being largely politics, still had some lightsaber fights in there, still had some battles and stuff. There's still violence in there, just like there's certainly a ton of violence in Game of Thrones among, other adult topics. But if you're looking at fantasy and the whimsical and quests and all that sort of thing, that's largely absent, and in its place is political bickering.
First of all, Game of Thrones is not all political bickering.
Yeah, but the political stuff is what drives the story.
Exactly. It's a political story.
No, but it's necessary for the plot. It is a political story. Phantom Menace doesn't need to be.
Yes, it does.
Like,
yeah.
But I mean, like, from the point of, like, the original 3 Star Wars movies to, like, all of a sudden say, hey, we're doing this prequel trilogy. This is the first one that was a drastic change from Star Wars.
Well, right.
That's the reason people don't like it. Not that it was a political movie, just that it didn't fit in with the other movies.
Well, I feel like
what movie has no politics?
What's that, Jesse?
You know what movie has no politics?
Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim.
Okay, well, no, there's politics in that because they at the beginning they have to talk about how to like pool their resources and like countries have to work together.
There's actually politics.
There's politics.
It literally starts with that.
Yeah. So wait. So what movie doesn't have politics in it?
I don't know. Daniel Tiger goes to the dentist.
Oh my god! I forgot about Daniel Tiger.
It's a 1999 classic Brad Bird film, also known as The Iron Giant.
Oh my god!
So,
oh Jesus!
My number one favorite movie of all time. Brad Bird, the Incredibles guy.
Yeah, well, he did a lot of Pixar.
Also, Michael Giacchino, I believe, or whatever.
Yeah, it's
whatever.
that or Giacchino. I'm really not sure.
He did the soundtrack for Elastigirl or whatever for Incredibles 2 as well.
Dude, he's so good.
Yeah, he did a lot. But okay, I just wanted to get on the politics train to say that because it was...
Right. Well, okay, going back to the politics thing with Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
You have like what, one fight per movie, and each movie's like 3 hours long.
Well, one like main fight per movie.
Yeah, like, and it lasts for forever.
Like one giant battle, but then there's, smaller battles and stuff along the way, other conflicts.
It's like Endgame where you
mean
get 40
scuffs.
minutes of action.
Scuffs?
Scuffs.
Yeah, there's a scuff between the hobbits and the giant spider, Shelob.
But there's like one fight, multiple scuffs.
Well, yeah, multiple smaller fights.
Sorry. Emergency. Michael Giacchino also wrote the Up soundtrack, so he's the one responsible for making you cry your eyes out at the beginning of that movie.
I have never seen that
I
movie.
swear Disney has him on retainer. He's done so many of their movies lately, and
I'm sorry we went back. I looked him up on Spotify, and I feel like everybody needs to know this.
No,
that
yeah, okay.
man made me cry
That's-
5 minutes into a movie.
that's a good point though. Is that like score wise, I would have to side with Lord of the Rings from
Thank
what
you.
I've seen.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't get me wrong, the Game of Thrones
soundtrack-wise.
theme song, like the Game of Thrones theme song, is amazing.
Oh,
but
yeah. Super
overall,
I give it a
very
3 stars.
singable.
3 out of 5.
4
I
out
don't
of
know. I
5
dig
stars
it.
for the version sung by Jack Black on YouTube.
I will definitely give Game of Thrones a plus in being more adult. I mean, maybe not everyone likes that. I personally do, and I think it's got a thing. It's got the one up or whatever there. It's got the upper hand there. But I feel like the story overall to Lord of the Rings, and this is kind of departing from that political point. I was just trying to compare Game of Thrones to Phantom Menace, which is one of the more hated of the Star Wars films. But I just feel like the story to Lord of the Rings is so much more entertaining. It's a lot more mystical and everything and fantastical, whereas Game of Thrones almost seems to me like what Star Trek is to sci-fi, where it's like a little bit more grounded in reality. And obviously, like I said, there's giants and dragons and White Walkers and things that aren't real. But in general, it kind of tries to play off as like, oh, this could have very easily been something that happened, whereas Lord of the Rings is very clearly out of that realm, which I think makes it a more entertaining fantasy film personally, or series of films, I guess. If you haven't caught the drift for me, I'm all about what I think is like more entertaining and, in terms of like the visuals and the spectacle and stuff like that. And I think that Lord of the Rings definitely, by being less realistic, wins on that front.
I mean, I think it does probably tell a better story.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, honestly, this will be my last thing. I swear on my life, in my opinion, the story told by Lord of the Rings and also The Hobbit, in addition to it, is the greatest story ever told by man ever. And that's coming from a man who's read like 3 books, and Lord of the Rings is not one of them. So keep that in mind. But I think it's a better mythology than the Bible or any sort of Greek or Roman or Egyptian or what, I don't know. For being something written in the last 100 years, I think it's easily the greatest story ever told, hands down. Better than Star Wars, in my mind. That's just me.
Well, I was gonna say we should try to like get to that point of the podcast here where we decide, which fantasy story we're gonna side with. Then,
Right? Did anybody change?
I did not.
Nope. Lord of the Rings.
Adam,
Nope.
you're still on Game of Thrones.
Yes, I am.
Honestly, I'm gonna have to say Lord of the Rings just because I think Andrew's right. It is a better story.
How's it feel to be lonely and have nobody agree with you, Adam? Huh? How's it feel?
You were my brother, Anakin.
I loved you. I hate you.
That scene still makes me cry.
Can we just spend the rest of the time quoting the 3rd movie from Star Wars, please?
Gosh,
I hate
Adam, that
sand.
made me feel like I got all my limbs cut off.
Yep.
Except for one hand. Okay, so Andrew, you just said then that you like the story better for Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Which franchise do you enjoy more?
Yeah, so on one hand, I think the Lord of the Rings films are significantly better than the Star Wars films in terms of the overall production and everything, story for sure. The Lord of the Rings story, I think, is, like I said, like miles away or miles above the Star Wars story. On the other hand, Star Wars is the very first movie I ever saw when I was like 1 year old, has always been a part of my life, to include having the 501st Legion, which is a group of people that professionally dress up like Star Wars characters, come to our graduation party in high school, if you guys remember that.
It was so
I
cool.
remember that. That was awesome.
that.
Yeah, it was pretty lit, wasn't it? So
Yes, yes, it was.
I love both, but here's where the thing about Star Wars that I did not say earlier is going to come into play here. Star Wars is a sci-fi movie, but I think a lot of people would agree that a more accurate description for Star Wars is actually science fantasy, because the overall story to it actually involves a lot of fantastical elements and things like the Force and, all that, which is very sort of mystical and almost like religious in its tone. And that's not something that you get from a lot of sci-fi movies. So although I think the story and overall production and stuff like that for Lord of the Rings is significantly better, I think that it kind of becomes sort of one-dimensional in terms of here's massive fights between, humans and orcs and goblins, and the elves are going to come in. And to me, even though I've seen all of the movies and love them, you could show me a random scene from any one of the three, and I might have a hard time figuring out what movie it comes from, because it all just starts to feel the same. Star Wars, however, I think by having both fantasy elements and science fiction elements to it, creates a much more sort of colorful universe that it exists in, that opens up way more doors than just fantasy would or just science fiction does. And so despite having some deficiencies in the story and all that, I'm going to have to say I think Star Wars is better than Lord of the Rings.
Jesse?
Well, Star Wars is not science fantasy. It's not at all. Midichlorians are it's physical fact.
Oh my god. Yeah.
It's physical fact, dude.
They tried
Watch
to Star
episode
Trek
1.
it with the midichlorians.
No, I'm teasing. What the question is: Star Trek versus or Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Clearly, I'm still picking Iron Giant, but between the two,
Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim is 3 on the list.
Rim.
Okay.
Iron Giant could take on a Category 6 kaiju. Don't add me.
Clearly. Did you see him go ballistic? He took on a nuke and lived.
Dude.
So did Godzilla.
Japan.
I was going to say, to be fair, so did one of the kaijus. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. I'd say Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings because they have better lightsaber sound effects. You know what? When I watch a movie, it's the sound effects that do it for me. Like, and I guess the visual appeal. But like, if you have good sound in a movie, it's just like, wow. Sound engineers really worked overtime on that. This sounds amazing. It just like draws you in, and so I really like Star Wars for that.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's all I have to say.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was gonna say that's like a really big thing though. Is like when you watch a movie, if you notice something in the video aspect that's a little off, it's much easier to disregard it and much easier to kind of forget about it. If there's something wrong with the audio, that stands out and completely ruins the experience. Yep. Like, audio is very underappreciated.
Don't worry, I got your back, buddy.
Thanks, man.
So Jesse and I are both
Alec,
saying
I
Star
think
Wars.
it's yours.
Yeah, what about you guys?
Yeah, Star Wars.
I think I'm feeling the Force and my midichlorians.
Ooh, the Force
You don't have any midichlorians. Otherwise, you'd be Force
personally. I feel like soundtrack wise, Star Wars has it hands down. John Williams, the London, was it Philharmonic or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, the scene with Anakin staring off into the desert with the sun setting.
Oh my God.
Do you mean
Anakin?
Luke?
Yeah, I think he means Luke.
I think they both do it.
Do they?
Actually, yeah, they both do.
Anyway, with a character staring off into the desert with the sun setting and the song going in the background. Very iconic. Secondly, Star Wars gets a -1 for having Jar Jar Binks. Lord of the Rings gets -1 for having eagles basically fix all their problems really conveniently. But not all the problems,
just
unfortunately,
some of them.
because yes, just enough to make it plot worthy. So with that being said, I think I'm sticking with Star Wars.
Alec?
I mean, I don't think it's a fair competition. I really think Star Wars is better. I want to say Lord of the Rings just to be different, but
Spiteful,
I can't do that in good conscience. Like Star Wars, I keep asking you, like, which one do you enjoy more? And Star Wars for me.
You can always say the Iron Giant. I'm here for you.
Nah,
we can start our own team.
Goodness gracious. All right, well, that brings us to the end. We'll start with Jesse this time. Jesse, would you rather always get stuck in traffic or always have a really slow internet connection?
Oh
God.
Always stuck in traffic.
Traffic?
Yeah, come on. A slow internet connection in the modern age? No, thank you.
the Chungus Among Us can't handle a slow internet.
Yeah, come on,
connection.
guy. How am I gonna upload on my Twitch streams? Ain't gonna happen.
Fair enough.
Not that I've been streaming lately.
We'll go to Alec on this one.
I am
Next.
with Jesse because if I'm stuck in traffic, I can stream Spotify and listen
I
to
was
music.
just thinking that in my head. Yeah, you can do something in the car.
Dude, I've realized lately how spoiled I am. Like if something does happen, like very rarely if something happens with my internet and it goes out, like inside my head I throw a little fit, like I'm a little toddler like stomping his foot. I'm like, why? Like it should work. Wow. But
Wow.
yeah, basically. This podcast with guest star Waluigi.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I couldn't go without slow internet. Plus, a lot of my work, I need internet, so got to go with that.
Including downloading our sound files to make this podcast.
That too.
Thanks, Alec.
Yeah, man.
Andrew?
I would definitely go with choosing slower internet for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, I'm going to be a rock star at some point, and so most of my day is going to be spent seeing the world and hanging out with people and then going and playing on stage. And like at that point, I feel like I'd be hopefully not wrapped up in my phone and internet. And so I'd rather not have to deal with traffic and route to doing all that stuff than,
or
having it.
Or counter, you try to tweet your band location playing and no one shows up because the tweet never sent.
Well, it wasn't no internet or traffic. It's slow internet. I mean, if I post that like a day or a couple days ahead of time, which I wouldn't because someone marketing would, then it'll be fine. But that actually brings me to my second point, which is I might always have slow internet, but like Jesse and Alec won't. So if I need something done with the internet, I could just go to where they have good internet and not have to deal with traffic to get there.
What if it follows you around like a curse though? Like every time you set foot in a building, the internet like goes out.
Well, then I would
walks to the New York Stock Exchange.
Then I would send a
That'd be
text.
horrible.
I would send a text to Alec or Jesse asking them to do something for me a day in advance. Then they'd get it the day of when it needed to be done, and then they could do it on their fast internet. Oh wait, no, or I would just do it a day in advance. You sound
like Pinocchio from Shrek 2 or 2 or 3, trying to not lie. And like he's like, I might not know
just
where I think
it may be.
Yeah, and he's just like going in circles. That's what you sound like right now.
I mean,
I would do it this way. That way I could make sure to have this, and it wouldn't be that way, so I could get away from the curse.
Yeah, either way, I'm choosing
Adam?
slow internet. So
yeah, that's fair.
I'm going with get stuck in traffic because I get stuck in traffic all the time. Like to get to work, it takes me 20 minutes, but on the way home at 3:00 in the afternoon, it takes me about 40. It's horrible. And I hate life. But having a fast internet connection so I could listen to my favorite podcast, Millennial Malarkey, on my way home.
Ooh.
Wowee.
And also, if you have internet, I guess you can check the Twitter. What's the handle for the Twitter?
Our handle, oh my gosh. Our Twitter handle is @MilMalarkey. That's MILL Malarkey. Hit us up with any questions. What would you choose? Do you like Game of Thrones? Do you like Lord of the Rings?
Are you
Hit us
Team
up on
Iron
Twitter.
Giant like me?
Who
You gotta
knows?
stop with the Iron Giant.
Join us next week when we all talk like Waluigi for 40 minutes. Wow!
No, that's next week. Ooh, wee, doo, ba da, ba dee, da, 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 wee, da, la.
Ba da ba da ba da ba ba da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba ba ba.
Ba 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 ba.